Yeah, your line, all is yours. You can start now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks to the Lightup Virtual Conference for having me today. The title of my session is a 15-minute digital transformation. And we're being powered and sponsored by C# Corner and the Tech Platform. If you are willing and able, please considering donating to UNICEF. It's a worthy cause, and we're all here to help try and raise funds for UNICEF. I know I'll be doing it after my talk. And thanks so much to the different sponsors out there. Without them, none of this would be possible. If you have an opportunity to engage with them outside of this conference, I highly recommend that you do. Thank you again to all the sponsors for making this possible. And so, we are into it. We are here to talk about a 50-minute digital transformation. But what the heck is a digital transformation? It means something different to almost everyone. I hear it with terms being thrown around like big data and the cloud. But in this 50-minute session, we'll show how it's possible to digitally transform a manual process into a modern, online solution where the resources are centralized and manual tasks are automated. Best of all, you don't need IT to do all this, and you already have all of the tools that you need. SharePoint and Power Automate will be showcased using out-of-the-box functionality and a no-code maker approach to our digital transformation scenario. A little bit about myself before we get into the session. I'm from St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And that's okay if you don't know where that is. But to give you a reference of where I'm from, I'm an hour from Toronto and 15 minutes from Niagara Falls. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in the Office Apps and Services category. I work at Brock University as a data architect, and for a lot of time, I was in the Power BI and data warehouse field, but now I spend most of my time doing modern teamwork and collaboration. And my favorite topics with technology are anything with a SharePoint list and Power Automate. The scenario that we're using for our digital transformation scenario is based on 3 real-world examples that I faced in my own work. At the university, we have exchange agreements between various universities and our own. These are pathways for students to go and earn credit at other institutions or come to our institution to receive credit. And the 3 times that I've encountered this scenario with different facets of the university, they were always being managed by a single user on their computer, and sometimes they were even being managed off a piece of paper, just like this. And in the past, some agreements have expired. The process is completely manual. In all scenarios, it has always been taken on by a new team that has inherited this manual single person from their desktop process. The Exchange Agreements team is new to SharePoint and Microsoft 365. The team needs reminder emails. They need to split the workload amongst the different agreements so they'll have different owners. They need a mechanism to view the status and share updates. The team also wants basic insights by country, what agreements have expired, other types of quick information, and hopefully some type of ad hoc reporting. Before I get into the actual demo and the talking points of the presentation, There are two key messages that I want you to take away when it comes to digital transformations. SharePoint and Power Automate are better together. The investment in lists continues to grow with recent announcements by Microsoft, with lists getting their own app coming very soon to your tenant. It will have more functionality and even a mobile app in the very near future. Lists are fantastic for storing and collaborating on business data for teams. And when it's combined with the dozen of Power Automate triggers and actions, lists become a legitimate solution platform for IT pros and citizen developers. When there is no app for that, consider using SharePoint and Power Automate as a lightweight solution platform when business processes are left behind from ERP and other large application implementations. To be clear, I'm not saying that lists will replace a database. They should not be used for highly complex workloads that would be better served by SQL Server, databases, Azure SQL, or the common data source. They should be used when users and business processes have opportunities to add value through centralization and automation. Throughout the build, I will try to keep a number of guiding principles in mind when I am building this and when I am digitally transforming my customers' business processes and problems. I won't put the tool in front of the problem. I will use Office 365 groups and Power Automate to be the glue that binds those various Office 365 apps together into a single solution. And I will use a simplicity of design to guide me when I'm creating my solutions. I'm going to take a quick drink and then we're going to jump straight into demos. Excuse me. At any time, if there's questions, please put them in the chat window. I'm not actively monitoring it, but I'm happy for the moderator to bring them up. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to take the legacy spreadsheet that we received and make sure it's ready to be imported into SharePoint. Let me zoom in. In order to move this data into a SharePoint list, we will have to first format it as a table. I'm going to format as table. And now I can easily assess the data quality as I'm going through. And I see that school name is text, and that will probably be distinct throughout. Exchange type looks like it's lookup information, but I see that we have different values. So I'm going to use Excel as a quick and dirty way to make my data consistent prior to coming into the system. You may have heard at the beginning of the presentation that I'm a data architect and I'm using Excel. That's okay. Excel is a powerful tool. It's friendly. Most people know how to use it, and it's quick. So if I can use this tool to find anomalies in my data, then why not? In this example, I'm looking at a country column. There's no country called Milan. So I'm going to cancel that, find Milan, and turn that into Italy. What I'm doing is cleaning my data prior to import. That looks good as well. Oh, this is definitely wrong. Spanish is not a country, it should be Spain. So what I've done, I've cleaned the data, I've formatted as a table. I can now get this ready for import into SharePoint. I'm going to save my changes. The next thing that I'm going to do is to hop into my Office 365 tenant, and I'm going to create a new Office 365 group. This will be my home. This will be the glue that binds this all together. I'm going to create a team site. And we're going to this demo 50 MDT. And we'll call this number 10. And I'm going to click next. This will create, I'm using everything out of the box. I don't want to do any custom development to get this done. And the reason why is because I want to get value to my customers as soon as possible. I come to this site and, well, let's get rid of this prompt. I come to this site and it's asking me to relog in, so bear with me while I do that. Sorry about that, folks. I guess I haven't logged in a while. Like I was saying, I come to this site and it is a bit overwhelming. You have to remember who your audience is when you're rolling out new solutions. This site is part of my solution, and my users have never used SharePoint or anything online before. So what I want to do is to remove the clutter. It's a very simple one-time housekeeping activity, but it allows me to remove all of these unnecessary items. So when my users come in, I want them to see only what they need to see. We'll just leave the quick links for now. And I'm going to republish this. And I'm going to remove all of the silly stuff on the side that they probably won't use today. They might tomorrow. And they'll still have the ability to use it again. But for today, we're not worried about it. Come to their site and they only see what they need to see. I'll refresh so we can get the latest version of the site. And now I'm going to go into the documents, upload our data file, and then we'll start the list creation process. Upload files, point it to my desktop, and grab our data file. This will upload quickly, and now I'm going to create a list. There's different ways of creating lists. One of the new features that came to SharePoint on recently is the ability to create a list from an existing spreadsheet. This adds so much value because now I don't have to custom craft my schema within the list. I can just import it as a starting point and go from there. So I've gone into site settings, site contents, and now I'm going to click new. I'm going to click list. I'm going to use the option at the bottom called from Excel. I've already uploaded my file. I'm going to check this and I'm going to give it a list name of Exchange. You can see the table. We're good to go. I'm going to click next. It's going to interrogate the data to try and understand the type of data types that might be there. This is not going to be as advanced as it would be within a SQL Server table, but it does give you options. For example, school is a title column, which in SharePoint talk is essentially a primary key. Exchange type, it's showing as a single line of text, but I think it would be better suited as a choice column. The creation date has been interrogated as a number. That won't work, so we're going to change that to a date. We'll do the same thing for start date. End date gets the same treatment. Now, the signatory, that just means the person who signed off on the agreement. There's no method for us to turn this into a person column. So we'll do that manually after. And it's important to do because having a person column gives us many more opportunities for automation using Power Automate. If I didn't want this column, I could specify do not import, but that's fine. Duration is a number, students is a number, balance, inbound, outbound. These are all numbers and those defaults were interrogated properly. Country, again, is a choice, and so is city. At this point, we are creating the list and we are importing the data. It's not easy getting data into a SharePoint list. There's not a lot of out-of-the-box tools available to you. This makes the process so much easier. And the amount of time it took me to get a sip of my drink. The list has been created. The data types are there for us to leverage, and we are good to go. Everything was imported. If there were errors, we would know. We still have the ability to update columns. The SharePoint list experience is improving daily. Every time I come to my demo tenant, my MVP tenant, or my work tenant, there's changes. Everything is happening so quick. It's great to see that the investment is happening, and it means that it's okay. It is safe for you to invest in configuration approaches within the SharePoint space. I'm going to do one more change to my digital home for my users. I'm going to add a button that brings them to this list. I'm going to edit the page one more time. I'm going to add a button. And the idea behind this is just to simplify their life, they being my users. I want them to come to the site and not have to look for things. I want them to come to the site knowing that the tools and the supports that they need are going to be available to them. I'm going to put in a very basic welcome message. Nothing fancy. Welcome to the site. To try and draw visual attention, I'm going to highlight this one particular area and republish. My users come to the site. They are greeted with their new digital home. There's the button. If they click on that, they're going into their exchange agreement. Nothing too high tech, but it's enough for them to get started within this new digital online environment. So I'm going to minimize this as my first demo. I'm going to bring up the presentation again. I'm going to ask the moderator if there's any questions at this point. I'm happy to speak to them before I go on with the rest of the presentation. Good enough. So what did we do? In demo 1, we used Excel for data validation and to create the list. We followed a guiding principle of not putting the tool in front of the problem. We used an Office 365 group as our user's new digital home. Our Office 365 group, and later in the demo, Power Automate, will be the glue that binds our solution together. We remove the clutter from the SharePoint site to give the users the easiest access to their tools. We use a simplicity of design when recreating our solutions so we can decrease the delivery time and increase user adoption. The next set of guiding principles is to add value to our users through centralization and automation of resources and solutions. And we'll do that by understanding the business processes to find opportunities to add value. We'll create a hub for teamwork by creating connected solutions. And we'll centralize everything in a place that will work for our users. So we're going to hop out again and jump into our second demo. We're going to do some work in our SharePoint list to reflect some of the business needs that we've identified in working with our users. One of the very simple and very nice features that has come to SharePoint for lists and libraries is the ability to expand the content to give our users more real estate when they're working in these lists. Many of our business users are coming from an Excel background and favor and appreciate more real estate in this type of view that they're comfortable with. Excuse me. One of the requirements that we laid out at the beginning was a very simple way for the team to look at the list to know if an agreement had a status of active or expired. So we are simply going to create a status column. We don't have to go into the list settings to do this work anymore. We can do it right from the front end of the list. And this is a huge step forward for people who are spending a lot of time in lists, especially business users who don't necessarily want to get into site settings and all that behind the scenes IT work. So we are going to create a new column called status, and it is going to be a choice. me, and we are going to have two values that will help reflect where we are in the business process or the status of the agreement. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to set that to active as default. And our column is created right where we did it, but now I need to backfill my data. So another feature within lists that users just love is quick edit. It's going to pop us into this Excel view of things, and we are able to update a column and backfill it all the way down. And I got to tell you, I have done this demo before, and the last time I did it was 3 weeks ago, I believe. And the view of how lists look today versus 3 weeks ago is completely different. The headers are more bold. They look more readable for accessibility. We're starting to see the early stages of the list app and list enhancements that were announced recently rolling out to the different tenants. So I had the ability just to do this very basic drag and drop. I know some of you are IT professionals, and this type of thing just seems so basic. This isn't necessarily for you. This is for you to show your business users how they can be empowered to do their own work. You and I, we are technically competent and savvy, but we are not the ones who know the business processes as well. If we can facilitate that work doing things like this, we've just empowered our users. They're more likely to adopt technology, and we're more likely to focus our time on larger initiatives. Another requirement that came up is that we needed to assign individual owners responsible for managing the different agreements. So we are going to add an owner column. And in this case, we are going to use a person column. A person column is very powerful because it stores the Active Directory view of that user, and it gives us so many opportunities for automation with Power Automate. Excellent. So it was created, but I need to backfill it for the demo. In the real world, we'd have real people assigned in here, but for this scenario, I'm just going to say that I'm the owner of everything. And let me just backfill that. And you'll see that you get this double name hash sign, and you may have even noticed a working processing icon on the left-hand side. What's happening there is that the SharePoint list is resolving the name within Active Directory. This may not be so simple if you had many people named Norman Young, but luckily in our case, there's only one of me, and we are good to go. Now, we've just met that other requirement where we can assign different owners, and that different owner will have individual workload items that can be assigned to them and tracked to them and so on. So what we didn't get out of our import was the signatory column, which should be a person column, but is not. So what we're going to do is we're just going to delete this column. And we're going to create a new one as a person column, and we're going to go through that process again. This again gives us opportunities for automation. It doesn't really buy us much right away, but in the long term, the more objects that we can create that can be leveraged for automation, it's up to us to do so, because that future-proofs our users and helps us reduce rework on the backside. So that's almost done. It's so nice to be able to backfill the data like this. Larger lists, this may not be possible, but the example of this demo, I'm showing how quick and easy this can be for other users. So one of the things that we noticed in the spreadsheet is that we have two calculated columns. Total students is a calculation of the inbound column plus the outbound column. And in the past, when they were using our paper process or our Excel spreadsheet, they were doing those manually. We can do better, and we're going to delete this column and create a new one. So let's get rid of this. Delete. And we are going to hop into list settings and create our new column. some column calculations, or sorry, some column data types can't be done correctly on the front end yet. And this is one of the examples. We are using a calculated column, and this is going to be based on the values of other fields. This will equal, a lot of this seems like an Excel formula to me. It's going to be the number of inbound students plus the number of outbound students. I'm going to click OK to that. I'm going to go back into my list to make sure that that is calculating correctly. I'm going to roll this over here. And like all new objects I created in a list, they get moved to the back end, but maybe that's not a good view for my users. So I'm just going to move this right over. And then the view has been automatically saved. That didn't seem like much, but that just saved me 2 minutes of work in the old version of SharePoint. Now, the same thing too is for balance. Balance should be a calculated column. It looks to be inbound minus outbound. So we're going to go through that same process again, and we're adding value. This is this little simple calculation at scale that my user does not have to manually do. I can do it for them, maybe in a day, saves them 10, 15 seconds, but at scale over a year for a time, maybe that's measured in hours. And in that way, that's worth doing. We're looking for opportunities to make life easier for them so they can move up that value chain of their own work to do things that are more meaningful or important. Doing a number calculation is pretty mundane, and I don't think that our users need to worry about that. So again, we're doing a calculated column. This one is called balance. Calculated column, there you are. I'm going to set this to equal to inbound minus outbound. Then I'll go back into my list. And there we go. Balance is now set to be a calculated column. My users will never have to worry about the total or the balance. It's all being done for them. One of the things that came out of our requirements gatherings with our sessions is that they needed some way of sharing notes with each other, or simply to say, this exchange agreement is in process, or we're waiting on something from the legal department. So we'll simply add another column. Another column, like notes, how we reflect and meet the needs of the business process. Boom, done. It took me seconds to do and gives them an opportunity to keep everyone on the same page, not handwritten notes on their little printouts that they're all running off the corner of their desk. One of the great things that recently came out this year for SharePoint is the ability to edit the default form. Previous year, this functionality existed using Power Apps. Power Apps, the Power Platform, is a wonderful tool set. It's not for every citizen developer, it's not the right tool for every new user to the cloud. It is an amazing platform for citizen developers. If I click Edit Form, I still have the option to use Power Apps, which is fantastic, but not necessarily required in all circumstances. If I just want to hide a form or rearrange the data, I can use Edit Columns. And I can simply move items around that make sense. So balance was one of the new columns that was created and tacked to the end. Well, I'd like to move that up because that is important to my users and I want to keep it in visual range for them. So I'll move that up. And perhaps I want to hide a column. I don't know, like signatory. Signatory needs to move up too. There we go. I click Save. My form has been updated. I didn't have to go into Power Apps. I didn't know how to do anything in Power Apps. I didn't have to go through that process of going in and out of another thing and then having a different user experience. My users can go here, have the same default experience, and this is important. So as they go from my solution to their next solution, consistent look and feel and operation. Huge value, such a small feature it seems, but just awesome for the user experience. Okay, the next thing that my users wanted was an ability to view all of the agreements by country. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is to create a new SharePoint list view to help identify that information. I'm going to go into list settings and create a new view. I'm going to create view, and I'm going to base it on my existing all items view. I'm just going to call this by country. I'm happy with leaving all of the default columns. I'm okay with the sort order, but what I want to do is a group by. And I want to group by the country, and then I'm going to further group by the city. I'm going to click OK, and I'm thereby saving the view. And we come in. This isn't a fancy Power BI report. This is quick access to quick information to answer a quick question. Perhaps they want to know how many agreements they have in Germany. They can simply change the view from all items to by country and have that collapsed version and view that, yes, we have 3 agreements in Germany. We can see that we have one in Mannheim, Munich, and Rutschleden. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. And I can drill in, and then I can see the details of it. And now I've made it easier for my users to visually navigate and visually find the information that they wanted. One of the other things that they wanted to do was have a quick lookup to see information agreements that are expired. So I'm going to go back into my list, and I'm going to give them a view that highlights what rows are expired. But before I do that, I should have set one of my agreements to expired. So I will edit the first view so we can see this. And the status is active. And I'm going to say this is expired. Save. So forgive that. Let's jump back into list settings. Again, I'm going to create a new view. This time, instead of a group by or filtering or anything like that, we are going to, again, clone all items, but we are going to filter on the value. So this one's going to be called by expired, and I'm going to filter the view. I'm only going to show items when the following is true, and then I get to look at my columns. So I am going to look for the status column, and if that is equal to expired, they're going to show it. They come in, if they select by expired, they have a quick filtering. They don't have to do anything fancy. It's just a button and a click, done. It's not rocket science, but it does add value to the users. They may like other views where they can have like a quick view and assess what's happening quickly. So why don't we create one more, and we'll just call this the summary view. And this will be something that will add a bit of view formatting to make it more readable. So we're going to start by creating a new view. And again, we start with all items. But this time we're going to deselect. We're only going to take the columns that are required. So in this case, all I want to know is the status, who the owner is, the total students, and boom. That will come up, And this is just a more consolidated view. We're getting rid of the noise. It's not necessary to see the quick views. But there's more that we can do. Knowing if an agreement is expired is important. When I look at the text, I see expired and active, they're the same font, they're the same font color. There are ways that we can bring more visual attention to those that are expired. To do that, we will format the view. I'm going to click Summary from the View menu, and I'm going to click Format View. I'm going to use something called conditional formatting. I'm going to add a rule. If the column status is equal to expired, we are going to make this thing stand out. We are going to make the font red and bold. We're going to save this now. So what did we do? We've drawn visual attention to those agreements that have expired and need attention. A year or two ago, this out-of-the-box view formatting had to be done using JSON code. Plenty of examples out there for people to follow, but there's no way a normal business user would get that on day one. This is more of a learned thing. So while we're doing formatting, let's look at the status column and add similar formatting to that. Again, we will use conditional formatting, and we will create a rule that says if the status is equal to expired, this is very similar to what we did before. We are going to, give me that, I'm going to make this red and bold and stand out. Excellent. Now, we're going to do something else. It's important for our business users to understand the balance. How many students are out at another university? How many students are in at our university? So we'll use that conditional formatting again to try and give a visual view to the inbound, outbound balance. So I've switched to our default view, which our users use, and you'll see that expired is it's visually highlighted, and I'm scrolling over to the right a bit and I'm seeing the balance. I'm going to format the balance view. I'm going to go column settings and format this column. Within SharePoint lists and libraries, you can format an entire view, so you're affecting all of the rows, or you can format an individual column. Unbelievable power inside of view formatting. You can take something that just looks like data in a spreadsheet and literally turn it into something quite beautiful. Right, so we are going to use conditional formatting for balance. We are going to create a new rule, and if it is, this is not what I want. I'm going to delete this rule, and I'm going to add a new rule. If the balance, balance, format this column. Conditional formatting, add values. Oh, that's weird. So something's changed. That's all right. We're going to skip over that, and I will show that later. So what has happened is something is not being represented, or not represented, reflected in the list properties, but that's okay. All it was going to do is if it was a plus value, it was going to be green with a check mark going up or an arrow going up, and if it was negative, it was going to be red and going down. But for whatever reason, this column setting is not interpreting the column correctly. So perhaps I did something incorrectly when I was creating the balance column. That's fine. I'll do one last check before I move on. I don't want to waste too much time on this. And it's simply because I didn't create it as a number. I'm going to change that, and I should be able to get right back in there and pick up where I left off. My apologies for that not working as expected. Format this column, conditional formatting, edit this rule. If the balance, here we go. If the balance is greater than 0, we're going to show this as no fill, more styles. We're going to say, you are good. We are going to save that. We're going to come back. We're going to add another rule. And if the balance is less than 0, more styles. Again, we're going to give this an arrow down and red. And close that and refresh. And let me move this more to the center of the screen and zoom in just a little bit more. I've visually indicated the areas that might be of concern to the business. It's very much like a dashboard, but clearly not as advanced. But the point is, visual targets, visual indicators, visual signals to let them know data that is of importance. We do it for the status column. We do it for the balance column. It's little things like that that are adding value to our users. Our users want a better way of working together. So what we will do is bring a better way of working together to the site. And what I mean by that is we have created a planner group for them to use. So this will give them an opportunity to stay on the same page and work together. So let me quickly come into my notes section, and all I'm doing is getting a link from Planner that we previously created for them. It's going to pop up this new link. We're going to change it to an icon. Planner. Select. They also need help for when they are ready to do it. And so what we're going to do is add one more link to them, and we're going to use the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. Excuse me while I get the link to that. This is a set of curated content from Microsoft that they build and they maintain, and we are able to push it to our site, or to our tenant, excuse me, in a way, in a way that we can customize. If we were using SharePoint and Yammer, we could bring help to there. So that is good. So in this demo, we've customized the list. We've made it reflect the business process, and we've grown our digital home to give them the tools that they need. I made one little mistake that I'm going to correct. Sorry, folks. There we go. Now I'm going to take a pause from the demo and jump back into the presentation. Before I continue, are there any questions? So let's talk about what we just did in the second demo. We added new columns, we updated other columns, we created views, we've customized filtering. We've understood the business process and found opportunities to add value. We added Planner, we added the Microsoft Learning Pathways. We're creating a hub for teamwork by creating connected solutions. Our digital home is central, it's not overwhelming, and it has the options our users need to get to work. We're centralizing in a place that makes sense for our users. Our third and final guiding principle is that we are going to connect our users to this technology by eliminating their mundane and manual tasks. We are going to drive adoption through direct support. People help people. We are going to hook users with technology by making their working lives easier. This will drive adoption. And finally, we're going to document our wins and we're going to advertise them. We're going to get right into our third demo. So we are going to edit this page again, and we are going to add another link. In the background, we've created a Yammer group to help support them. Let's give this a moment to come up. Now, Yammer is a great way of building knowledge communities. And what I mean by that is, let them ask a question. Let you answer it as the IT person. Over time, that information becomes a repository. So we're going to add this to our site for them to use. This is almost how we transition from building a solution for them to supporting them to them finally being self-sufficient. This is part of my transition to operations plan that I use at work. Their digital home now has just the tools they need. But now let's hook them. Let's get the automation going. Let's get into Power Automate. And what we're going to do is to try and take care of some of those mundane tasks that they have. I'm going to click Automate. I'm going to go to Power Automate, and I'm going to see my flows. I'm going to create a new flow. Let me zoom this in a bit. I'm going to create a new flow that is scheduled from blank. And what that means is the timer job. We're going to run this job on a timer, and it's going to run every day for us. The first thing that SharePoint. Get items. I'm just going to copy my site URL. Okay, don't show me this again. I'm going to point this to my site. I'm going to have the list go to Exchange, and I'm going to show the advanced options. I want to filter the query just to get the end date where it is less than or equal to current date and time, which is an expression called UTC now. Okay. End date less than, quote, UTC now, quote. Save. And I like to do these in a iterative way so I don't get too ahead of myself, and it's easier for me to debug any errors. It is run successfully. We see the nice pretty green bar, and then we'll look at the metadata to make sure that something actually came back. And we see that the University of Copenhagen has expired. We're going to edit now, and we're going to get back into it. What I want to do is to set the status item, update item. Custom value. Going back to my Exchange list, the ID is going to come from the previous get items. And you'll notice that if it switched it to a loop, so if there was more than one value, it puts it into this area. The title will continue to be title, but we are going to find the status value and turn that to expired. Save. Test again to make sure we didn't goof up anything. We should see the bold red expired status on more than one column. I've refreshed. And we'll see that a number of the other schools were in fact inspired, and now they reflect that as a result of the flow. Awesome, we're adding value. We're halfway there to getting everything that they needed in terms of automation. So the next piece that we're going to do is to give them reminders so they're not always having to know about things after the fact. So the first thing that I'm going to do is figure out when my reminder date is going to be. So I'm going to create a new variable. The variable name will be var reminder date. It is going to be a string, and the value will be an expression, and I'm going to add days. I'm going to use my good friend UTC now. I'm going to do 30 days from now as the reminder, and I'm going to format the date in a year, month, date format. Say okay to that. Let's run this flow again. I want to make sure I don't have any errors along the way. And when that's complete, initialize the variable, and we'll see that our value is for reminders will be August 13th. Okay, let's do another get items. Some of this may seem repetitive, but this is what works. It's not a huge burden on anything that we're doing. Get items. Again, we're coming into our, oops, I need the site address one more time. I hate when it does that. Sorry about that, folks. SharePoint list name, exchange. I'm going to do another filter query. End date equals EQ. Doing my single quotes again, and then I'm going to add my variable that I defined earlier. Save and test. Excuse me. I hope everyone's enjoying the conference. I know there's a wide variety of speakers and subject. I'm very happy to have been a part of it, and I hope that everyone will consider donating to UNICEF. So I think that one of the dates I'm going to manually manipulate to make sure that it picks up on our reminder emails. If I'm not mistaken, it was 8/13. 8. I have to run that one more time because if I don't get values, I'm not going to get a reminder email. So we're dummying the data to trigger an occurrence of this. When it's complete, I'm expecting there to be some rows returned from get items to, and we have it. University of South Australia has expired. This is awesome. Now we're ready to set a reminder email to our users to say, hey, time to kick it up a notch and get our reminders, our agreements. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Get our agreements renewed before they're expired so we can keep having these great pathways to the other universities. Send email version 2. And now I'm going to use the dynamic content from the get items to, and I am going to send it to the owner. So get items to is listed here in the flow, and it's also the same name in the SharePoint action that preceded. It would be a very good design practice to use more meaningful names. So I'm going to put the owner email in. It creates a loop again, and I'm going to call this exchange agreement expiring soon. And then I'm just going to put in a little bit of dynamic data. And reminder. So we're coming close to being at the end of the presentation, and I don't want to get into creating too much of a fancy email at this point. So I'm just going to do something basic, send it. If this works out well, it will look at the list, see what is going to expire 30 days from now, and send an email to the owner, giving them an opportunity to intervene in the business process and adjust it before it expires. So let me open up my email and see if we have an email from them. And here is the agreement reminder saying University of South Australia. Within Power Automate, you can add all of the fancy HTML formatting to a message or use an adaptive card or whatever you like. It's all there. And it works well out of the box. So our flow worked. Yes. So here we go. Because we're out of time, we're going to hop right back into the PowerPoint presentation and talk about what we did. We added the Yammer group to provide direct support, and we're driving adoption through that direct support. We're using Power Automate to expire our agreements and to email reminders out 30 days from now. We're hooking our users with the technology by making their working lives easier. This will drive adoption, I promise you. What I didn't show is that we've created a solution showcase where we'll take these solutions that we're building for our users, put them on a showcase SharePoint site for other users who are contemplating moving to the cloud to know what's in store for them. If you want to know more about SharePoint and get all the latest news, the best practices, and all the other trends directly from the SharePoint team, check out the SharePoint blog. If you want to get inspired, visit the SharePoint Lookbook. This site is amazing. It has the best site builds possible that you can reference how they were built, learn what web parts they use to stand up the site, or better yet, push them to your own tenants. I'm happy to connect with you outside of this conference. You can find me at my blog, which is normyoung.ca. You can find me on LinkedIn at norm-young, or get connected to me on Twitter at storman_30. I want to thank you for coming. This event is amazing. The speaker lineup is amazing. The cause is unbelievable. The world's changed, and I'm happy to do my little part, and I'm sure you're glad to do it as well, to try and make things better. If there's any questions, and if we don't have time, that's fine, please consider reaching out afterwards. I'm happy to talk about this and anything else related to SharePoint and Power Automate. If you have feedback for me, please use the speaker feedback or the event feedback. Thank you.